Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Eye of Canon podcast, your home for in-depth discussion on lore, the High Republic, and the whole canon of the galaxy far, far away. Also, happy Revenge of the Fifth to you all. Definitely enjoying the feast, the celebration that is Star Wars May the 4th yesterday. My name is Matthew. I'm coming to you, as always, from Underworld North Studio in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And I'm joined from across the continent by your friend and mine, Mr. Joel Davis. Joel, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing good. It's a little cloudy here, but otherwise it's doing pretty okay.
Did you do any Revenge of the or May the 4th parties, the May the 4th celebrations yesterday?
No, I did not.
That's right.
Strangely enough, no, I did not.
That's right. All right. Well, we'll get into the kind of things you're up to. I'll mention what I got up to in a bit. But first off, we got to talk about what we're talking about this week is Andor season 2. It keeps the ball rolling with an impeccably handled 1-year time jump. And so we travel to lovely Ghorman and to more of our own real world history in the as we explore the trials and tribulations of episodes 4 to 6 of season 2. Before we do that, get some plugs out of the way. You follow us mostly on Blue Sky at Iron Cannon, Blue Sky at Iron Cannon, also Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. But that's mostly for talking about the tractor beam, which I'll get to in a minute. Also, if audio only is more your speed, you can find us on Spotify and Apple Podcast. Go to Ion Cannon Podcast, not Ion Cannon. That's the old feed. If you want older episodes, check that out. But Ion Cannon Podcast is the new stream, the new Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and wherever you get your podcatchers. Check us out there. We're happy to diversify, expand our offerings, the way we get our message out into the world. We are also, of course, proudly part of the Star Wars Underworld podcast network. And here on the Underworld YouTube channel, we have memberships, we have super chats. If you chat with us, we will be happy to reply as best we can in the comments below. If you super chat us, we'll get to it. I'll interrupt myself mid sentence to get to a super chat if I have to. Of course, memberships and all the other ways you can support us on the channel and the network. Talking about Andor, talking about comics. I'll get to that again in a second. But also, of course, the Star Wars Underworld Discord server down in the description below. You can check out get a link in the description for link down below, I should say, for our Discord server where we're talking about Andor, talking about comics, talking about Free Comic Book Day, talking about book news and just different thoughts and feels all about Star Wars, as well as probably Marvel and Thunderbolts and everything else going on in the world of nerddom and nerdery. And also to say there have been some events like some we got movie nights and game nights. Joel, if you want to chat about what's happened recently and what might be coming up.
Yeah, we haven't decided yet what we want to do this week, but I'm kind of leaning towards another game night just to continue playing the Fortnite, Star Wars, and level up. An excuse for me to level up. But yes, we do game nights like Fortnite. We do movie nights. We watch Star Wars. We watch episodes of the shows. Sometimes we'll just watch a random movie out of the blue. So always on Fridays, always around the 6 o'clock Pacific time, 9 p.m. Eastern time. So yeah, be on the lookout. Join our Discord. Lots of fun to be had.
There we go. Yeah, definitely a good time, especially around the early May season of Star Wars, celebrating Star Wars, etc. Speaking of all things Star Wars, Tractor Beam Comics reviews here now. We can get to it every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Chris Abbott and I chat about the comic books that came out either that day or now we're still catching up. So, of course, this Saturday was Free Comic Book Day. So we'll do the Star Wars Free Comic Book Day, as well as the Codebreaker #1. It's Ethan Sachs Poe Dameron comic book, Rise of Skywalker #3. Here, there's a very interesting moment in that, and most excitedly, Alex Gur's ongoing #1 2025 hits the shelves this Wednesday. We are going to talk all about it. We're going to dive right in. So please do check that out right here on the Underworld YouTube channel and Twitch and Facebook out this Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific time. All righty. Please do that. We're going to dive right in. Before we talk about Andor, before we get into some book news, there was another eyes on screen thing we got to talk about. Dropped yesterday, and that is Tales of the Underworld. It dropped yesterday? Yes, it dropped yesterday. I know what date it is. Tales of the Underworld, the continuing animation of in the Clone Wars ish style. And this one, of course, talked about the give the Ventress and Cad Bane stories, some treatments there. So Joel, those to you. Let's first of all, one thought on the Ventress story. What do you think of that one?
Nice to see her resurrection. That was
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, that was fun. Felt like a pilot for a TV show that's not happening. As of yet. I'm glad she's back. That's definitely what I'll
Hmm.
say about that. If I had my one thought.
Yeah. It definitely filled in a lot of what we saw in the Bad Batch. But paper nerds, the paper to screen pipeline a little bit rejoice because the Dark Disciple moment where Dark Disciple leaves off with Obi-Wan and Quinlan carrying her body back to Dathomir. And yeah, we see that continue. I'm glad they addressed it, but they addressed it so movingly, and we saw just we're thrown into this really emotional moment for Quinlan. And how having Revenge of the Sith in mind, seeing how supportive Obi-Wan can be even to a Jedi who breaks the code and forms this romantic attachment, he can still be there for his friend. And yeah, it really intriguing story about why Ventress can't actually see Quinlan, because she'll probably just disappear into the ether, but also she has this Padawan that she's taken on. And yeah, really curious to see again if they do a show. They should probably, this is drumming up support for it. Definitely. Sorry, what we see in Bad Batch in her character growth, definitely being more supportive of the light side, possibly resisting the Empire, all those themes, even building peace with this between the helping to build peace between this old separatist farmer soldier and the native indigenous clan community that uh, you know they need to share water rights, and yeah, to build that peace there, whereas Ventress in the past would have been also a soldier. So definitely a moving tale, really wonderful to see a redeemed Ventress on screen. Of course, we got that in the scripts from Katie Lucas that turned into Christy Golden's. Was it Christy Golden? Yeah, Dark Disciple novel. All right, and then the Cad Bane story. Joel, I'll throw it to you. What do you think of the Cad Bane story?
I think I like this one a little more because I think it was a more it felt more complete. Felt kind of like this is the
Mhm,
origin story of a little bit more thematically strong of like here is the two Duros kids,
mhm,
um and one goes down one path of the law and the justice. Sorry, got a fly in here. And the other is Cad Bane, and we all know what happened to Cad Bane. So
mhm,
I thought it was just kind of an interesting kind of look at Cad Bane's just passive vengeance, and that eventually he just becomes
mhm.
the ruthless bounty hunter we all know and love, in in a strange sense.
Yeah,
I think I like this one a little bit more in terms of I felt more like a complete story arc,
yeah, let's see
and
that.
with the in the Ventress one
Mhm,
overall. So yeah, I mean I like both of them, but I think I like the Cat Bane one just a little
yeah.
bit more from a story perspective.
It definitely, I mean, it definitely has, it sticks to the tales of
Mhm.
formula of doing the time jump. Whereas Ventress, it's basically, I was saying to Dom, it's basically a 45-minute Clone Wars episode, but
Pretty
it
much. I
really
mean,
self-contained. It's
I
it's
think
it's
there's a little
all
bit of a
one.
time jump, but
Yeah, but it's one continuous story
yeah,
effectively. And I don't know, I found it more enjoyable, frankly, the Ventress story. Maybe because the Cad Bane was just so tragic. You know what's coming. You know what's about to happen,
so sad.
and in front of his own father, but turns out to be his father. A lot that's wonderfully implied and not told explicitly for this kid. I mean, again, I'm thinking about the future and what other things this kid might pop up in, but that's not the point of this. It's, you're right, to show Cad Bane's origin into ruthlessness and descent into ruthlessness.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, you got Toto hanging around. He isn't able to take out Omega. I'm a little disappointed, but also kind of glad we didn't get the Boba Fett moment because that would have weakened the main duel in the third episode with his former friend, who's now now the head sheriff, the
Mhm.
chief sheriff, whatever. And so, really gripping story, really tragic story. I don't know. I mean, clearly the Venture story is more hopeful. So
I mean, I
hopefully,
think that's what I mean. Tales has
mm,
always done this, right? Like, there's like a
yeah,
light side story, a dark side story. It's
that's
with
true.
we've been going back to Tale of the Jedi. Like, you get a
Hmm.
because like Dooku and Ahsoka, similar. They're similar because
Hmm.
they're both kind of Jedi who kind of the Order disappoints them, but
Hmm.
Ahsoka sticks with it, and well, we all know what happens to Count Dooku.
Yeah.
Same with Morgan and Barris. They're kind of broken characters.
Hmm.
One sticks with the Empire, one joins it and then leaves it, and then I mean, technically, Barris is maybe dead? Question mark.
Hmm.
But her story is definitely more optimistic than Morgan's.
Hmm.
So there's kind of always been that pattern of like
Yeah.
you kind of got a dark side story and a light side story.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. Great point. Okay, so I mean, maybe we'll delve more into it. I'm guessing the flagship will delve more into Tales of the Underworld at a later date when Andor is done, because we got lots to talk about. Also, we do have a bit of news, bit of book news. First off, I'll briefly mention Kevin Scott's Tales of the Nightlands. That's continuing on a different planet, not Vader's Castle, not Mustafar. Um, forget is it? It's oh gosh, what planet is that in? Is that on?
Uh, what Mustafar?
No, Tales of the Nightlands. I think it's
I didn't you look at the thing. I think Ryloth, Ryloth. I think they're going for
yeah,
Ryloth in that.
yeah, that makes sense. Uh yes, sorry. I just want to get this right. I want to get this right. Because I well anyway, yes, right off. That makes sense. Well, I didn't make any notes either because well, Chris and I will talk about this on Wednesday because we got some actual book news to get into. Oh yeah, and then we'll pick back up maybe some other this week and other things we want to chat about very quickly. But first off, we got some book news. Sequelists rejoice. Yes, we got Star Wars The Last Order. It's a young adult novel by Kwame Mbalia coming October 21st, 2025. And this is up on the Penguin Random House website. Following the end of Star Wars, this is from their website. Following the end of Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, the Resistance rescues a ship full of young passengers who had been kidnapped by the First Order as Finn and Janna set out to find their First Order officer responsible before he could endanger any more children. The two former stormtroopers must wrestle with their own complicated pasts as soldiers of the oppressive regime. Take a deep dive into the pasts of popular characters Finn and Janna in this richly drawn, action packed story that fans have been asking for. Also, a few notes here that the Penguin Random House site says that Mbalia is New York Times best-selling author, won the Coretta Scott King Author Honor Award for a novel he wrote, Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky. Sounds pretty cool title. He's also written he edited and probably wrote an entry in a collection of short stories called Black Boy Joy. 17 stories celebrating Black boyhood. So Finn, Janna, it's interesting. They were cops. They were black cops, and now they're not. They're fighting they're part of the resistance, and yeah, this is going to be a good. I hope so. I can imagine an excellent little piece of black representation, young adults, a young adult story. Yeah, following Finn and Jenna that we've wanted. Yeah, like it says, we've wanted this for a long time. We've hoped for, at least we definitely want Finn and Jenna and Lando to explore their stories, and maybe Lando will show up in this. Seems likely, seems possible. But that's of course the framing device for them to go back in the past and say what what was their story, how did they get out, how did they I mean we know how Finn gets out, but how did Jenna get out, um more detail, and yeah, the complexities of being part of this regime and being soldiers. And I don't want to, well, it isn't I don't think I'm reading too much into it, right? Given Mbalia's background here, uh, of course, in Star Wars, race isn't exactly coded 1 to 1, but in our experience of it, from what I gather, representation is still real. It's still a thing. So yeah, I mean the more of the details I think we'd rather have on screen, but it'll be good at least to start looking with Finn and Jenna coming out. I think the Wikipedia page says coming out to celebrate the 10th anniversary of The Force Awakens, where we see Finn get out of the First Order. So this looks really cool. This looks really interesting. And again, we always, the representation angle, but what's the nuance, what's the complexity that this brings? I think this looks like it will bring that, and also going ahead in the timeline a little bit, just a little bit ahead of the Rise of Skywalker, just like Star Wars Starfighter will. So, anyway, that's those are my thoughts. What do you think uh, of Star Wars: The Last Order by Kwame Mbalia?
The Last Order. This will be the main villain of the Simon Kinberg trilogy. I'm just kidding.
Right.
No, this is good. This is fun.
Mhm.
I think it's interesting that we finally pick up on the fact that Finn and Jana were ex stormtroopers. I think
Yeah.
that's always been something that could be talked about. And yeah, it's nice to see a story take place. Doesn't sound like it's gonna take place that long after Rise of Skywalker. It seems
Mhm.
like it's gonna take place like next week or something. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think it'll be a fun little story. I think don't go into it expecting like big galactic details on what the universe is like.
Mhm.
Does sound like I said, it does sound like they're doing this is the adventure that happens like a month
Yeah.
later or a week later.
Mhm.
Compared to Starfighter, which is 5 years later, so a lot more
True.
time has passed. So yeah, I'm excited and I can't wait.
Yeah.
Nice.
So it's 464 pages, which is, I mean, but the young adult size, so it's usually a little smaller. So it's going to be chunky, but the young adult size. Um, yeah, looking forward to where that goes, where the story goes, because YA novels, they can definitely go places. There's just because it's YA, as we always say, doesn't mean it's less serious, less dealing with real issues. It's just younger characters dealing with real issues. Of course, Quinn, Finn and Jenna are younger at this point, when they're talking about when they are First Order soldiers. So yeah, should be should be a good read. Looking forward to that come October. We're in New York Comic Con, you say? Good news. All right, before we dive into our main topic, just want to pull back and say, yeah, May the 4th be with you. Revenge of the 5th be with you. Last night I had a fun party at Stormcrow Manor. Had some food, had some drinks, had this blue milk cocktail. It was fun. Joel, you also celebrated kind of around the last week or so, a certain film that I love dearly. What were your thoughts and feels on seeing Revenge of the Sith in the theater?
It's a cake. Ah, um, no, no. No, I think my actual reaction is, it's funny to see a movie that you have so ingrained in your head.
Mhm.
It's like every line, every scene. It's like you got it memorized. Um, and yet, just to see it in the theaters and like, wow, it's like, damn, I have like the seeing in the
Mhm.
theater just so different and unique.
Mhm.
Uh, which is it's so such an experience, especially with a movie again that you kind of have so sheared into your brain.
Mhm.
It's like wow. So that was definitely my experience seeing it in the theater.
Yeah.
Uh, with my dad. So that was nice.
Nice. Yeah. Was it a I should say, what was the sorry, frog in my throat here. What was the crowd like? How was their response?
Pretty empty because I went on a
Okay.
Tuesday in the afternoon.
Fair.
Um, so it was actually a pretty empty theater. They didn't go on the weekend.
Yeah.
So not much of a crowd, which is nice for me because that means I get to have lots of privacy.
Yeah.
So sadly I cannot report on crowd
Yeah.
side.
Fair.
There was one guy eating a pizza. Um,
Well,
uh,
it's something. Something. Get
that's
a photo
something.
of that. I'm just kidding.
But no,
Yeah.
just me and my dad. We were watching it together, and it was
Mhm.
lots of fun. It's like the standard size screen.
Yeah.
So that was
Just bigger
nice.
than what you normally watch. Right?
Well, better than TV, that's for
Yeah.
sure. So, yeah, I mean, definitely not Dominic's experience.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
I hate telling that story.
40x.
I know, like, my God, how do you do that?
Yeah. So
But
when you're so good. So good.
yeah, it's even just the minute, the Coruscant battle Coruscant again, like I'm just like once again just hooked, like just I'm gonna stare at this and watch like yeah, yeah, all giddy and excited.
Mhm.
But it's again, it's like it's just being in the theater, just like really, it's like, oh, I'm in the theater, this is so exciting, and you just can't get that same experience at home.
Mhm. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, that's definitely true. Um, yeah, you get the crowd, distracting crowd, the
I
darker
got no
side.
crowd,
You
so
got no crowd. I got a crowd all 3 times. Um, I did find myself feeling, at least the second time I watched, feeling, how when the bad guys win, you
yeah.
kind of feel in awe. Oh wow, it actually happened. They actually did it. That's amazing. This is weird. I've never felt that way with Palpatine before. So
I always feel that way with
yeah, I
Palpatine.
know.
Uh,
Amazing. So, anyways, let's dive into our main topic. Let's go for it. If I can find this thing, where are we? There we are. Arc 2 keeps it rolling. Take it away, eyes on screen. Andor season 2, episodes 4, 5, and 6.
right, we're going to Gorman, everybody. Yeah, the
Mhm,
next arc of Andor has happened. We have a 1 year time jump, and we're kind of checking back in on everybody.
mhm,
So yeah, let's just do overall thoughts first, and then kind of break down the arc by arc and the storylines. Overall, this arc very much. I think I like. So I'm just gonna be upfront. I think I still like the first one just a
mhm,
little bit more than the second, but that's like comparing a
mhm.
10 out of 10 to a 9.9 out of 10. It's like not a very big jump. But this was definitely very much we're setting the stage. We're setting the stage
Yeah.
for the Gorman massacre. It's coming. It's happened. From what I hear, the next arc's peak from people who got to see the whole show.
Mhm.
Um, so we're getting the good stuff next week, folks. So don't worry. Um, we're watching it because I was like so late in the game. 'Cause, like got Revenge of the Sith and it was at dinner all night.
Right.
So I had to watch all Andor. But I watched it. I watched all 3 episodes like this time.
Mhm.
Um, and much like I will say that this time it didn't have a complete motif to it compared to the first arc again, because again
Mhm.
there's a lot of setup. Sorry,
That's right.
to the bigger storyline that's coming up.
Mhm.
But I do feel like they handled it good enough. I didn't feel like there was a big whiplash
Yeah.
moment. There was with one character, but I think that's to be expected because I'm like, I'm not quite sure what you are up to.
Mm.
Um, but um,
Yeah.
but
No, I can dive right in.
but then
There.
no, no, listen, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. But then it's like, no, wait,
Sorry.
no, I get it. Um,
Okay, go for it.
no, I mean there was of course, we're talking about Cyril. That's what we're talking
Oh, okay.
about. But then
Yes.
after that, it's like, okay, I get it. But overall, very exciting, very interesting. I think 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 are gonna be almost like a super arc in a way,
Mhm.
near the end. But I'm very curious to see a little bit of criticism I've heard from friends about the burying your gays trope, which we'll get to in the end. Um,
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
when there isn't a lot of gay representation in Star Wars, and
Yeah. Oh, burying your gaze. I didn't know you heard what you said.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Interesting.
that
Yeah.
it's always a little controversial when you have to when one unfortunately gets killed.
Yeah. Interesting.
Although I'm glad they got a kiss out of it.
Yeah.
So that was good. Oh,
Mhm.
and of course we'll talk about Tony Gilroy keeping his eye on Canon with something that I was super excited about.
Yeah.
This is very much a me thing.
That
I'm being very vague, but I want to talk about this more in depth when we get to the arcs. But yeah, overall, another great arc of Andor,
was a spoiler.
and
Sorry.
I'm
Go ahead.
curious to see where it all go. But yeah, Matthew, your overall thoughts?
Very, very Cassian heavy, which is great.
That
Um,
too.
yeah, it was so much, a lot. focusing on Cassie and following him, which is good. I mean, the show is called Andor. Therefore, let's focus on Andor. Oddly enough, though, I found, and I said this on Wednesday at Tractor Beam, I found it like, okay, well, where's Mon Mothma? Where's the Mon Mothma story? I want the Mon Mothma story, which is maybe a bit unfortunate, but we see the story moving a lot with Andor. My reaction is unfortunate because it isn't called Andor and Mon Mothma, although it could be. That would be amazing, but it's called Andor. Um, but yeah, I kept wanting to get episode 6. Now, thankfully, get this release order, I was able to sit down and watch it from like 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. on Tuesday to Wednesday. Because I
God
also was,
intended.
yes, I was also watching Revenge of the Sith for the third time that night. But yeah, I was able to get there. Yeah, definitely. It's a much better experience to watch them all in one sitting. That's seems to be what as intended. And yeah, you're like you said, definitely setting up for for the next arc that drops literally 24 hours from right now. So uh will not be okay. It's gonna be tragic. It's gonna be kind of like this Tales of the Underworld, right? It's gonna be tragic. We know what's coming and we are powerless to stop it. And so I'll get to all of that in terms of what the real world implications of how we watch this, how we view and connect this show to the real world. I'm quite intrigued by some of the choices that were made here in light of everything I'm thinking about. Well, I'll I'll get into my sermon there in quite a bit, but yeah, that's my overall thoughts on Andor season 2, episodes 4 to 6.
Well, honestly, I do think this kind of begs the question, and this is something that the
Hmm.
other Star Wars shows um, haven't done,
Hmm.
the exception of Ahsoka, to various degrees of success. I mean, I think Mandalorian's very successful in this.
Hmm.
Uh, and Skeleton Crew as well is multiple story arcs.
Yeah.
Where Mandalorian, Skeleton Crew, Book of Boba, Kenobi, all kind of follow one story. It's one storyline. Um, I do wonder if Andor had just been, here's Andor, he's on adventures. I wonder how successful that show would be without the other storyline, without the
Hmm.
B plot and the C plot and the D plot sometimes. Um,
Hmm.
Before we jump, it's like we got, season one. Yeah, we had Andor, but then we had like stuff on Ferrex. We have Deidre storyline. We have Cyril storyline. We have Mon Mothma storyline. We have, you
Hmm.
know, um, it's multiple storylines interwoven through time and connected to each other. Um,
Hmm.
Mon's a little more separated from the rest. Although she and Andor are probably about to come into contact with each other, hopefully someday.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to be on Yavin together. Um,
Hmm.
um, I kind of wonder, like, I remember people saying, "Oh, a storyline about Andor, would that work?" And while Andor is still very much the catalyst for everything,
Yeah.
he's not. This is very much a ensemble cast of characters, each with their own ongoing
Hmm.
plots.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't know. I think there's something to be said about that.
Yeah. I mean, given what this episode, these 3 episodes deal with, but also we know is coming in Secret Cargo, Mon Mothma, she she reminds us that this show's really a question of in the system versus out of the system versus burn the system. Um, it seems like, I mean, that seems what the Rebel Alliance coalesces around out of the system, whereas Saw Gerrera is more burn the system, or
I don't know what
let it
Saw
choke
Gerrera
it.
is at this. I don't think he has burned the system. I
Maybe
just think
not, not at this point necessarily. I don't. I mean, I mean, he was.
not really. He just
For him, it's
talks about
like,
he just says he's gonna die before the Republic comes back. So at this
yeah,
point, I don't even think he just. I just think he just thinks he's dead. I think he's a dead man.
or just choke on the system then, and the Rhydonium system. But yeah, I mean, well, and it's interesting. I mean, Mon's whole story is her efforts to protect Ghorman through legislation and how that fails, and of course we see what happens, what her response is to that failing ultimately. Again, if you watch Secret Cargo, this isn't a spoiler of what's going to happen. So yeah, I think all those other storylines, I mean, they're going to come together more explicitly next week or tomorrow, and probably next week even more so, the way Mask of Fear does, right? Mask of Fear is very much connected. It's very much a tie-in to this show in ways that probably could have been advertised better, frankly. I mean, that might have limited it. It's another question for another time. But this one,
I mean, I don't think it was
yeah,
meant to be an official tie-in. I just think it was just a coincidence.
I guess. Although you can bet Alexander Freed got notes probably regarding what this show is going to be and what's going to do with these characters, especially again next week and no tomorrow and the week after and next week. But yeah, if anything, you know, Saw and Mon Mothma kind of give a kaleidoscopic sort of perspective on Cassian from looking at him from the outside, whereas Luthen and Bix are looking at him from the inside in a way, right? They're closest associates, which we'll get to quickly shortly. But yeah, I think I don't know. It would be, I mean, yeah, the appeal, to answer your question though, the appeal of the show without those other storylines, it would just be repetitive, maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's worked with Mandalorian,
Yeah.
but
Well, that's
and
because it's two characters going together, very different characters, right?
that's true.
Din and
Uh,
Grogu are just so different characters. So yeah.
that's true. Kind of more the just adventure of the week kind of thing.
That's true too.
Um, and then kind of the other shows are kind of more like, well, with Kenobi, it's more like that was a movie. That should have been a movie.
Kenobi is episode 3.5. Come
Pretty
on.
much. That's
Yeah.
a movie. Boba Fett's a mess. Ahsoka tries to do the multiple storyline thing. You got
Yeah.
Hera and with Sabine. It's gonna do the multiple storyline thing next season, apparently, with the yeah.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other thing. We can talk about that later. Oh yeah, let's get to it. Let's get to it. Let's get to Kathy and Bix first. Let's get to our mainstays. Yeah, I did appreciate that
Mhm.
this was a very Cassian focused arc, even more so than the last one. It was nice to just see Cassian and Bix together. They
Mhm.
kind of had this relationship on again, off again thing, and now it's kind of finally here they are together, sitting down. And it's interesting to kind of see where they are. I mean, Bix still has a lot of problems.
Mhm.
Because of what happened last episode and with Dr. Gorsk. Is it
Mhm.
Gorsk? I always want to call it Gorm. It's like, no, that's the planet. Dr. Gorsk. She's got her PTSD still.
Mhm.
Um, and she kind of needs a release. She kind of needs
Mhm.
vengeance. Cassian is kind of also having his problems because it's sort of like, I gotta protect you. I gotta work out for you. He's very, maybe even too protective, almost a little too stifling
Mhm.
at the same time. um, that they live on Coruscant. Which, by the
Mhm.
way, I love how in their disguises, Bix always calls Cassian, "Oh, that's my husband."
Mhm.
Not coincidence, I don't think. I think I don't think they're like officially like married in like
Yeah.
a you know official way. But I think for fantasy space worlds, they're space married, for lack of a better term.
Mhm.
Even like the final moment in the arc, they're kind of doing the weird hand touchy thing. It's like, oh, you're touching hands. Oh my.
Yeah.
Mhm. I thought that was interesting as well. Um, yeah. Ooh, excuse me. I also think it's interesting. Lucen's kind of coming into it. I think it's interesting.
Sorry.
Lucen's kind of approach here with them. I'm not quite sure what to make of it.
Mhm.
It's I mean, Luton's always interesting, I think. I think he
Yeah.
is the most three-dimensional character in the show. What I was getting at, kind of like almost trying to get them both out of their funk in an odd
Hmm.
sense. Um, and I, you know, trying to like, get a sense of like, hey, you're too attached. With Andor, like you're too attached to Bix.
Hmm.
Gotta snap out of that kid. Um, Whereas with Bix, I think it's sort of a. I'm not quite sure what he's trying to get out from Bix. Maybe it's like you gotta you gotta be. I need you mentally there. You're gonna be one of my agents.
Hmm.
Don't take like the depressant antidepressants. Um, so I thought that was interesting as well. And also,
Hmm.
it's something. I mean, I told you this off screen, and I
Yeah.
think it's interesting because we're starting to seeing as Lucid and Cassian are kind of talking to one another. How Cassian is very much Lucid's protege,
Hmm.
but and also like a good Padawan to a Jedi Master. Cassian is slowly but surely kind of is going to grow what we. Oh, I forget the line. We are what they go beyond.
Yeah.
Kind of an interesting thing, when they're arguing, like we're not
Hmm.
droids, Lucen. Even though
Hmm.
Kathy still goes on the mission to Ghorman. But we can tell like Kathy's starting to learn Lucen's ways. And I don't know. I thought that was all very interesting. I couldn't help. I did get a little bit of a chuckle and a little bit of glee when like Bix got her revenge on Gorsk, on Dr. Gorsk.
Oh yeah.
I hope that's not necessarily considered a good thing, but at the same time, it's like, oh yeah, do that, no good sucker, and then they just walk out like badasses.
Yeah.
Do, 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 Um. So yeah, I quite enjoyed seeing a more Cassian centric arc. Definitely
Yeah.
stronger than the first one. But what did you make of the two? And you can add Lucen as sort of the third party.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a growth in this in that moment. That last moment at the end really exemplifies it. Of Bix having claiming the space to be more active, right? For the first two episodes, she's just there in the safe house, and Cassian's off on Gorman, and she's struggling with that. What do you do? I mean, it does bring up both the the real concern, but also what's missing with Jedi and attachments, right? For example, in that, you know, yeah, it's with Luthen's perspective, I should say specifically. He's all, this is gonna be a weakness. This is gonna hold you back, and it's holding Bix back, and it's this tug and this tie. And if something happens to Bix, what's gonna happen to Cassian? Is he gonna be lost? Is he gonna be uh no
Compromised.
compromised? Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. Sorry, and as we know, as I think we mentioned this last week, possibly, in at the beginning of Rogue One, he is kind of lost. He is kind of compromised in a way we don't quite know. There's a reason Bix and Luth and them aren't in Rogue One, other than there's an in-universe reason for that. So yeah, it definitely this growth in saying, okay, Bix needs to be a soldier herself as well, right? She really did hold her own in that first arc on that planet. Um, she can be a fighter. She held her own on Ferrex. You know, it's just the complication, the tension of saying that they are attached, they are together. They don't want to shouldn't get married, because then the Empire will know who they are and have their records, and you don't want that. But there's definitely a stability there that is both. Luthen is right in saying, okay, this is emotional pressure point, but wrong in that he missing the possibility that they could be each other's greatest strength, right? And that's the thing that Yoda in Revenge of the Sith doesn't grasp, right? That the Jedi focus on attachments doesn't allow for as much. Um, in the High Republic they allow for it, but for Padawans, and we saw Obi-Wan we saw Obi-Wan being there to help Quinlan carry Ventress's body to the pool. So yeah, having all that in mind, I mean, that's a coincidence that we have those two images. But this episode, we'll get into Valencinta. I put that in down below, but
Right.
this episode does have these three couples that uh, are going to. I mean, that's what Tony Gilroy said in the that YouTube chat with Ash Carlson, that it's what happens, or it was maybe a celebration, I forget which, but how um, being in love, being a couple in the middle of a war, and what that ends up doing to you and what the costs are. But it does push forward this question with Luthen. Last week we said Luthen believes that you can't have a life. Luthen believes that you can't have a meaningful, pursue meaningful relationships because the cause is everything, and it's the folks who can't actually maybe take part in the cause, the wider masses that you're fighting on behalf of. You're sacrificing your soul for them, and I think Vix and Cassian, and we'll see with Cinta, especially, has come around to saying, no, we're actually gonna see what we can have here in this life that have meaning. Otherwise, what are we fighting for? And that is, of course, the arc of the show. It's the arc of Rogue One into A New Hope, right? What Saw himself says, right? Similar type of thing you mentioned, how he'll die before the Republic returns.
Right.
He'll die before he sees the thing worth fighting for, which interesting biblical parallel. I'll get to that at the end. But yeah, it's again the growing distance, I think.
Mhm.
Luthen becoming less relevant uh to the overall story, giving way to someone like Mon Mothma, giving way to I mean all these characters, then giving way to Luke and Leia and Han, actually finding meaning while also fighting the cause, leading the cause.
Yeah, I think Saw and Luthen have this, not nihilism. I think that would not that's not the right word. It's like maybe fatalism is a better word
Yeah.
for it, where like they both know they're doomed men to die before they see that. It's
Mhm.
like I always forget. I always forget the speech. It's such a
Mhm.
great speech. I always forget losing speech of like I'm not going to see that endless sun. He's not going to see the
Mhm.
sun. Basically, he's not going to see
Yeah.
the shining city, the path ahead, the light at the end of the tunnel.
Mhm.
He's um I think, I was reading an interesting forum quote where I think the difference between Saw and Luthen, and we can get to this later when we talk about Saw later, is
Mhm.
I think Luthen it's like Luthen kind of knows he's a monster and kind of hates himself for it.
Mhm.
Like I feel like he's the kind of guy who looks himself in the mirror. It's like, God, you sicken me, you sicko. Like he hates himself, kind
Yeah.
of low key hates himself, but he kind of knows like, oh, this is what we gotta do, man. Like, and
Mhm.
Luthen wants the Luke Skywalker day. He wants the day when Luke can come and say, in a
Mhm.
metaphorical sense, he's not like seeing the future. Um,
Yeah.
so it's kind of like he's disgusted with himself, but he kind of feels like that's the
Mhm.
only path left because his whole thing is, I mean, I use the tools of my enemies. I
Yeah.
have to do things that are maybe objectively morally evil because the Empire is 20 times more evil, and
Mhm.
he'd be correct because one group might be assassinating, but another group is building a Death Star and going to destroy planets and
Mhm.
have Sith fleets of Exegol clones, and
Mhm.
Palpatine's gonna use the dark side to become God. So
Yeah.
there's balance there.
A little bit.
Um, where I think Saw kind of revels in the madness a little bit,
Mhm.
especially by the end there. But we'll get to him later.
Yeah.
But I do think it's sort of this interesting
Mhm.
fatalism that is building the bridge to what ultimately would be more heroic,
Yeah.
morally upright
Oh, sorry.
rebels in a way. And I just
Yeah.
think that's fascinating to
Yeah. I
see.
mean, we had that moment in season one
Mhm.
where he literally looks in the mirror when he's changing into his public persona as
Yeah,
the collector, whatever. And but even then, it's who's the disgusting one? Who, I mean, he's kind of disgusted by the persona too.
right.
But yeah, he has this moment, literally looking himself in the mirror. It's like, oh, grumpy. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it was nice to see Bix and Cassian. So
Mhm,
obviously, Lewison gives Cassian his mission to go to Gorman. Um,
mhm,
and well, let's. This was sort of the biggest part of the show because we got Cassian on Gorman, we got Cyril on Gorman. We, we'll try to separate out Cyril and
mhm,
Caspian and Gorman as kind of different entities
sure.
for the discussion. Um, so let's just start with Gorman itself before we get into like the characters.
Yeah.
Um, really love this place. Beautiful set, by the way. Just
Mhm,
production, beautiful, great stuff. Um, and I really appreciate how well they fleshed out the culture.
yeah.
It's very, like Ferrex and Gorman have been just like some really fleshed out worlds on Star Wars, and you don't always get that. And I really appreciate, when a world feels alive and like,
Mhm,
oh, this is a culture, this is a place with a society, and they do things a certain way. Um, which isn't always something you always get in Star Wars, unfortunately.
mhm,
Or you don't get to spend a lot of time on, unfortunately, even
mm.
when they do have a little bit more of an aesthetic going for them. Um, I love the Jur French
Yeah.
language. I thought legit for like a few minutes they were speaking French, and I'm
Yeah.
like, "Are you guys just speaking French?" I mean, it's not the first time Star Wars did that. Um,
True.
I love the this whole scene with the spiders. And also, I'm going to talk about now. Tony Gilroy keeping his eye on the canon because we have the Tarkin massacre,
Mhm.
and that's a big deal. Okay, so this is why it's a big deal for me. Okay,
Legends look back. Here we go.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, okay, so the Gorman massacre has actually been something going back to the Rebels source book in from the 80s. This is how far this idea of a Gorman massacre happened.
Mhm,
However, the original Gorman Massacre from Legends is basically too long. Don't read.
mhm,
TLDR. It's basically there was a group of protesters at a shuttle bay. Peaceful protesting. Like hey, hey, ho, ho, the Empire's got to go.
yeah.
They were blocking Tarkin's shuttle from landing. So in order to disperse them, Tarkin decided let's just land the ship anyway and squish them. And we did.
Yeah.
And that was the Gorman Massacre. That was like around 15 BBY, so that was early in the Empire.
Mhm,
And Tony Gilroy, this guy, this Tony guy right here, he decided, you know what? Let's keep that. That's gonna be now just called the Tarkin Massacre, where Tarkin squishes a bunch of Gorman protesters at a
mhm,
at a at a landing platform. And apparently, one of the behind the scenes interviews, he calls that a mini massacre. So if this is a mini massacre,
mhm,
what does like? Oh my god, what's the actual Gorman massacre proper going to look
mhm,
like? Holy Toledo. I really like that. I really like just being able to see um
mhm.
kind of the reason why the Gormans are not happy with the Empire. Um, and their presence there.
Yeah.
Also, I really liked seeing the Gorman Front movement. It reminded me of a lot of uh, old school communist European groups with their meetings and the
Mhm.
committee
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. Um, I also found it interesting that yeah, they're also privileged, but they're also not very good at rebelling either. We see that at
Yeah.
the end of the mission. We'll get to that when we talk about Vel and Cinta a
Mhm.
little bit. But yeah, overall,
Yeah.
love the planet Gorman. It's very 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 fun. Well, what did you think of Gorman, Matthew? And also, did you catch the Tarkin massacre thing, or did you find that later after I was like, oh my god, they did Tarkin squish, yay!
Yeah.
Um,
And so no, I didn't know what the Tarkin massacre, what the original Gordon massacre was. So really, really great detail that they brought that in. Again, Tony Gilroy.
Mhm.
Last week he does the Rakatan thing. This week he's doing the the Tarkin massacre. Um, moves it to the center of town actually, and it makes it a real plot point, a real grievance that the Empire is building this armory that's putting shadow on the monument, and that's considered to be an offense, an affront, a real insensitivity, a provocation, as we know with the version of the Von C conference that we got, that what Deidre is doing is she's trying to provoke provoke the Ghormans into the Ghorman front into doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. And so it's a really amazing way of taking this nerdy detail but making it fit the story really well. As Tony Gilroy, yeah, some guy who claims to not care about Star Wars. Come on, here we go. Yeah, the Ghorman was really fascinating. It's 20s and 30s Europe, like you say. Um, the chronology doesn't quite line up, but if the Tarkin massacre, it you have the Tarkin massacre, and then we'll have the Ghorman massacre next week, or in 24 hours tomorrow.
How does the chronology not line up?
Well, what I mean is the Tarkin massacre is Kristallnacht, and the Gorman massacre is the final solution, right? Uh, in that one's kind of the prelude to the other,
okay.
in a way. Although the way, I mean, the chronology doesn't line up, because the reason I'm going there is the music, the clothing, the thing. This is generations upon generations of artisans and designers, and this whole textile industry, the vilification, demonization through propaganda, all of it speaks to me of the way a Holocaust film builds up the richness of the Jewish community, or not builds up, displays the richness of the Jewish community in in Europe, before the Holocaust. And definitely, the reason we're getting such a rich tapestry of culture here is to make not next week, tomorrow, all the more devastating, right? We really grieve it. We're really gonna feel it. And yeah, that's why filmmakers doing Holocaust films do that as well. You the hairstyle, again, the music in that fourth episode very much was, oh, this sounds Jewish. It sounds like Holocaust remembrance, and the celebration of culture. I mean, this isn't the Holocaust, but was Fiddler on the Roof, which is the pogroms in Russia at the beginning of the 20th century. All these things coming together to say, okay, this is going to be Star Wars version of that. And so, yeah, the Gormans are white. Yeah, they speak French. I will say that kind of threw me. They speak this version of French, sort of. That threw me
French,
off.
German.
It's neither. It's its own thing. It's just using the phonetics, if you will, of French. And that threw me off, because I was like, whenever I hear French, I'm like, okay, well, I took French into high school, right? In Ontario, you have to. I actually paid attention. Was one of the few folks who paid attention. I'm not fluent, but for my day job and for other things, I do have to work in a bit of French and figure that out. So, and just being in Canada, the reality of Quebec is there, and so I try and understand a little bit as much as I can. Try to pick out words. There are no words to pick out. It's not French, so it's like, I was kind of playing with my brain. Anyway, it did make it feel, though, more grounded, more real. And if it sounded like Yiddish, it would have been too on the nose. So had to be a little bit more subtle there. Also, I mean, there were, of course, Jewish resistance movements, but the big reference there gathers to the French resistance. It seems to be there. So the Gorman Front. Here's my question, though, is I thought about this and I thought, okay, is this going to be this parallel to the Holocaust? Is it going to be effective, or it's going to be a little bit of a disappointment, or a little too subtle? And being a little vague. Preface is to say, yes, I'm a Christian, but I'm also my Zeta survived Auschwitz, descendant of Holocaust survivors, right? His parents did not. They were murdered at Auschwitz-Birkenau. A few of his siblings were murdered in the Holocaust. Others survived, moved to Israel, and have lives there, and their children have lives there. Others of us, of course, came to Canada. My grandfather came to Canada, and we have our life here. He died of old age, uh, maybe 5, 6 years ago. Um, but his tombstone has Holocaust survivor on it. So I like to say I think I know what I'm getting at here and talking about here. Um, I've wanted this show to be the moment that Star Wars finally really comes out and speaks to our moment, political moment now. And I know, Joel, your point of it's never been so great. America's always had this undercurrent. There are folks who are saying the quiet part out loud now, and ICE is doing the quiet part out loud now. And we got that a little bit at the beginning of the first arc, but I'm wondering if making it such a strong Holocaust parallel, at least I think it is, um, a Jewish parallel. I wonder if that's going to blunt the edge a little bit because here's the thing with Holocaust remembrance, from what I can see, is it goes in two different directions often, and we're seeing this really play out, frankly, we're seeing this play out uh, in the not a debate. It's the social media firestorm over Gaza and Israel and the IDF. Um, you know, either the Holocaust is a human problem. Humans are capable of doing this to other humans, and so we have to be on guard whenever totalitarianism and authoritarianism are on the rise, or Gentiles are going to do this to Jews. And so Jews have to be on guard whenever there are Gentiles who are causing harm to Jews. And the reality of the Holocaust is that it's both, right? We cannot deny, we have to affirm that this was, you know, just like, and I'll go there, just like the residential schools was British and French imperial forces on indigenous communities because they were indigenous. Slavery in the U.S. because they were black, and because America was racist. With the Nazis, and the 6 million Jews were murdered because they were Jews. We can't deny that, right? We have to affirm that.
Mhm.
But it can we often see this divergence between the two and say people focus so much on, oh, it's because they were Jews. Oh, it's because humans are evil. And I, for one, will gravitate towards oh, it's becoming humans are evil and we have to be more diligent. But um, what we see and the reason, I think the reason why after October 7th, so many folks, Jews, Christians, elsewhere, are so quick to be so quick to say give Netanyahu and the IDF a blank slate, basically, and say any criticism, any accusations of genocide, that's anti-Semitic, that's hatred of Jews, is because the state of Israel is upheld and seen as this bulwark, the only defense against another Holocaust. You can debate that logic. I I think I don't buy that logic. I think there are plenty of other safeguards like the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It's a pretty good one. All the democratic norms that all of these countries have instilled. And so,
Unless you're just someone who's like, screw the norms, I'm gonna screw the charter. I'm just gonna do it anyway.
well, and that goes to the other side of saying the inability to see a certain figure in a certain country that I would like to visit in July, saying screw the norms. We're going to even start rounding up American citizens. It doesn't matter because they're Hispanic, and the inability to make that connection. So I hope, and I hope, and I hope that Andor, the next arc, can uh, continue to help people make that connection, that what was happening in the 20s and 30s, even just a glimmer, even just a hint, even a whisper is happening now, and that is far too much. But I maybe I was expecting too much of this show then. If you know, if they lean just fully into this, the Holocaust story in Star Wars.
I don't think it
Um,
is though. I don't really.
so
I think
maybe again, I hope it isn't just, but
yeah, good.
I'm I hope it isn't. I hope they add other elements in that make it more like, maybe something that's happening now, or help people to see what's going on. I just I thought just the resonance with, the way my family tells our story, which is a vitally necessary story to tell. Holocaust denial is a serious problem, you know. Um, but uh, yeah, I hope there's also things that can connect to uh, what just the overall human problem behind genocide and why that happens, and I hope that can help open up hearts and minds, or at least um be a moment where Star Wars continues to be prophetic in the way George Lucas was prophetic, in that
Even though I don't think
saying,
George Lucas was that prophetic, I
no, by
actually
prophetic, what I mean by prophetic as in Star Wars being political and talking about the Viet Cong and talking about imperialism, and that's what I mean by prophetic. um critic Political
Mhm.
critique is what I mean, right? And Bush, I mean, we just saw Revenge of the Sith, right? And all that.
Mm.
So hopefully it continues that tradition. um
I
yeah.
just I don't know. I think I
Mm.
don't see this as a Holocaust story. I don't think that's what this is
Okay.
even going for. I just think this is just going to be a big protest that gets everyone gets shot at. If anything, there's more of a connection to Tiananmen Square kind of situation,
Yeah, I can see that.
or the Egyptian protest that all get shot at.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think I don't think there's gonna be like next year's gonna be. I mean, there'd be camps or stuff. I don't know, but I don't know. I just see there's gonna be a big protest, and then the Star Destroyers come in and blow up the city.
See, I think so. What we know is that the strip mining is going to destabilize the planet,
Well, that's true.
and the planet's going to be, so it's not going to be gas chambers or
Mhm,
concentration camps,
mhm.
but it is going to be on the genocidal scale.
Oh yeah.
And so that's what I'm getting at, right? The scale of it, right? 6 million Jews. I mean, we invented the word genocide to describe the Holocaust, right? Um, so that's where, and again, I do, just again, the way it's depicting the before, it just, they're never going to come out and say it. It just, to me, in what I've experienced in terms of the way the
Um,
Jewish community tells its story, the way my family has told
True,
its story.
but I think that's the problem of looking at Star Wars as a one-to-one. Like,
Yeah,
I don't think
it's
the Empire.
subjective.
It's like even the Empire being a fascist empire. It's like
Hmm.
what status quo are they trying to do? It's like you don't ever see
Hmm.
them being like humans. Like,
Yeah.
there's aliens in the galactic government with like the guy shouting "War Empire." I like that guy. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't quite know what exactly we're going to be looking for
Yeah.
here because I don't think there is any. I think I don't know. I think I don't know. I just think maybe that's just something Star Wars. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's just something like, well, it's fake in space. Like,
Yeah. And a way of talking about the human problem, right?
right.
Um,
I mean, because Andor's not really talking about the human problem because there's not really an anti-alien bias here.
no, by human problem, I mean, um, like the attitudes and the um, steps towards genocide, as in just something about humans and the way fiction can reflect on that. I don't mean in the universe in terms of human versus non-humans. I mean,
Although we could
you
use a
know,
little bit of that. I'm going to be honest.
it it
Yep.
so that's the thing. They won't come. Tony Gilroy's too smart to come out and tell us this, right? But um
I guess I'm
yeah.
kind of just curious what the Gorman. I guess we're all curious. Like, what does the Gorman massacre actually look like?
Yeah.
right? Is it just the planet's gonna just explode?
Mhm.
Which I guess can't really. I mean, that might be a little too much because the Death Star's supposed to be the thing that does that.
Sure.
I don't know. I see the trailers with like just people getting beat by the stormtroopers, and I'm like, I
Mhm.
just think this is just like a big protest that's gonna just
Yeah.
cause everybody to get massacred. Um, but
Yeah.
maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
I mean, it's got to
Um,
be way more than 500.
that's true.
You
It's
know.
gotta be way more than 500.
Mhm.
Uh so let's move on to the next person who's also on Gorman, our old buddy Cyril Kern, who for like 5 seconds I thought, oh, has something changed?
Mhm.
Maybe he's starting to realize and like, oh no, he's still an ISB agent who's having way too much fun. And getting it down with Deidre for 1 hour. Probably
Mhm.
very efficient. Um,
Mhm.
I found this plot point to be very interesting. Hey, I love his talk with his mother. I love how they're like even the Gorman front who's like
Oh yeah.
listening in are like, this mother is terrible. It's like, hey, like yeah,
Sure.
it's like
Yeah.
terrible. And it's like you're like, oh ma, you're listening to too much Fox News, Star Wars Fox News,
Yeah.
blah blah blah. And um, and if you think he's slowly infiltrating, gaining their trust, then
Mhm.
he's reporting back to Deidre on the ISB. But I find interesting is that he's excited, but he doesn't even know the full story of what's really going on.
Mhm.
Deidre and Partagaz seem to really be, keeping away the vital information of what they actually are, what the end game is here.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's going to be interesting to see what happens as we get to the penultimate moment in what in the Gorman massacre finally
Mhm.
when it finally happens, when it all goes downhill. So I thought that was interesting. Um, yeah. I don't know what's gonna happen to Cyril. He doesn't seem like he's on the straight and narrow path at all. He still seems like kind of a henchman who
Mhm.
likes being an imperial a little too much. But maybe he isn't gonna be redeemed. Maybe he kind of is doomed. Um,
Nice.
so
Yeah.
who knows? I don't know. Cyril, slimy, bad man. I wonder if he and Cassian will meet each other again. It's sort of like he sort of dropped the whole
Mhm.
Cassian obsession, but they're right there. They're like there.
Yeah.
Next time you talk to Ash, talk about Les Mis. It's like the Cyril is his Javert.
Yeah.
I,
That's
I
interesting.
am,
Yeah.
I am Cyril. Do not forget my name. Um, he was
Yeah.
a police detective. Um,
True.
so
Yeah.
there's sort of that. But yeah, what do you make of the Cyril Deidre plot
Yeah.
line?
I like how they when she hits the lights. I was-
Yes.
it's an interesting thing because he in season one he's so at least when with the his job, that security job, he's very tough and a strong sense of justice, but clearly clearly pretty soft sheep. You know what I mean? There. So overall, we were talking about this last night actually at dinner. Um, quite deeply, quite profoundly, I think. And the question is, will Cyril uh turn? And here's the thing: in this, I think this arc, um, collect my thoughts here. This arc, it really could go either way. It's on this knife edge. It's he's emerged from his mother's shadow at this point. He's still kind of in Deidre's, kind of replaced his mother with Deidre a little bit.
Mm,
But
some Freudian stuff
as
there.
he continues to grow in confidence and his strengthen his own character, similar in a way, a little bit to Bix, not in the same way. I mean, Cassian's going to be more receptive to that, but Cyril, as he grows in strength, one thing we talked about has how I think Dom and Din talking about how he needs this approval from his mother, and there now he needs this approval from Dedra,
He's the approval from the Empire in
and
general.
the approval from the Empire. But he loves being in on the meeting, right?
Hmm.
if he grows out of that, if he no longer needs that, if he provides it for himself, will he be more open then to what the Gorman Front and the rebellion are saying? If he sees the Empire committing such a grave injustice themselves, is his sense of justice going to shoot up and say, no, wait a minute, this isn't right? Or is he going to say, no, no, the Gorman Front, they're these agents of chaos, the Empire is bringing their order, I am going to step up, be, this co-conspirator with Dedra. We'll see.
Or will
What?
he do what Jabir did at the end of Les Mis? I'll let you decide that.
Yeah, maybe. That's also possible. That he
Break him.
just can't live with himself, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, who is he going to resent more? Is he going to resent Cassian more? Is he going to resent Dedra more? Is he going to resent his mother more, or himself more? And that seems to be driving where he goes in the story. I can really see. I think they're setting him up to turn. I can really see him going from, thinking like Quinlan Voss, for example, going from double agent to actually hearing what they're laying down. So it's certainly possible, especially, like we hear from his mouth saying, oh, this propaganda demonization of Ghorman that you're hearing on Coruscant Fox News, that's not really true. They're actually have this rich culture, and they're very kind people, and they don't deserve this bad reputation. Is he gonna? The more he gets to know people in the Gorman Front, maybe the more attached he gets, maybe romantically or friendship wise, whatever. Uh, the more he starts to believe that they are the victims here, and that's a possibility. He is not in Rogue One, so who knows? But uh, that doesn't mean he's not somewhere pulling Agent Callus, fighting for the rebellion somewhere.
Or he's not. Or he's just
Or he's
respect.
not. You never, again, you never know. I mean, yeah, it's there's multiple possibilities here. And Tony Gilroy could just be playing with our expectations, which is entirely possible. So
Yeah. Unless you have anything to say about Deidre. Do you have anything to say about Deidre before we move on to Vel and Cinta?
the way she's serving as a foil for Cyril, which is interesting because Cyril, did a lot in season one. I think was more interesting, was the strong female lead on the antagonist side, and Louise Goff was talking about that a little bit. I think here she's kind of the straight man. She's towing the line and sticking to the line. And yeah, we have the thing from the trailer with her unclenching her collar, but she's committed to what she's doing. And it's Cyril who is wavering potentially or not, but is having this more motion driven reaction to Dedra, to what's happening potentially on Ghorman, um, to his mother replacing him with a spider. you know, uh, yeah, she makes Cyril a more interesting character, but I think she's gotten in this arc, she was a bit more uniform, therefore a bit less interesting to see how she might wrestle with the implications of what she's about to do. Uh, that yeah, we'll see. See if she has an attachment to Cyril the way he does to her. He's the one who initiates that little peck on the cheek there. Um, we saw Cinta come around to Vel. Maybe Dedra will come around to Cyril. We'll see. I don't know.
Well, speaking of which, it seems like Cinta and Vel have seemingly kind of patched things up together.
Mhm.
Before the end.
Yeah.
That was a nice little conversation they had. Actually, no, I'm gonna actually, I'm gonna kind of to them kind of last. I want to kind of go back
Okay.
one more time. Because like this kind of leads into something. Um, I want to go
Sure.
back kind of one more to the Gorman front,
Okay.
just one more time. Um, I've because Cassian goes to Gorman as a fashion designer.
Mm,
He's learning Lucian's ways. Um, and uh, goes into learning about the front a little bit, and he says, "You guys are sloppy. You could have easily been tricked. Thank goodness I was who I was. Otherwise, you'd be
mm,
dead." Um, it's very interesting. And then I want to kind of switch to the Lucian Cassian discussion. Um,
mhm,
uh, about how Luthen wants Gorman in the rebellion or the Alliance network because they're a
mhm,
rich planet, and like imagine a place like Gorman
mhm,
going down. It's like, well, what if they don't? And it's like, well, they're very
mhm,
brightly. And again, it's like it's true. It's kind of a win-win for Luthen. Win, you get a rich planet on your side.
mhm.
Lose, you have the Imperials bombing the equivalent to Paris.
Yeah.
It's again why I'm never quite sure if the Holocaust thing works. It's like they're Jewish, but they're also French, and this is Paris. This isn't some backwards
Mm,
nation. This is like the center of European
yeah.
culture. So the one-to-ones aren't winning. Um,
I mean, there were really rich, like wealthy and artistically, culturally viable Jewish communities in
that's
all
true.
throughout Europe. So,
I mean, that's true.
but
But Gorman, the city, is definitely, I think, supposed to be space Paris.
yeah, there's definitely the Art Deco influence there with the cafes and all that. Yeah, I do get that, and the language. Yeah,
And the language and the berets. Can't
yeah.
forget those berets.
Mhm,
Um, I think that's also really interesting as well because he's right. Again, as I kind of been saying again and again. One thing for the Empire to destroy, backward village in the middle of nowhere, it's gonna be a
mhm,
lot noticeable,
mhm,
and if you're gonna see that explosion if they start firing upon uh space Paris, essentially.
mhm.
What'd you make of kind of just the Lucian's plans and the front itself? I mean, outside the whole thing we've gone over it already.
Yeah. Well, first of all, with the Empire, I mean, that's why they're demonizing them, because they have to make this effort to demonize them to say no, they're not part of the core. They're not white, if you can use that term. That they're something less, and something they're not human. They're something less, and so they're upsetting the natural order by claiming to be, and therefore uh, we're justified in whatever actions we need to take on them. That's the human problem. That's the thing that leads to genocide. That's what I mean. With Luthen, yeah, I mean, he's trying to get in there before that happens, while Gorman is still very influential. My sense in this one, he was just trying to feel it out and figure it out and see
Mhm,
uh what the status is, where they're at here,
mhm,
and to find out. And yeah, that argument with Cassian about how Luthen wants to go forward in provoking and bringing the Gorman front in, whereas Cassian, I think Cassian can kind of almost smell Dedra's plan in a way, whereas Luthen's kind of giving into it and playing into it. And it's a question. It's hard to tell who's right here, right? I think we're supposed to say Cassian's right ultimately, because we also know, again, we don't want to play into Dedra's plans here, but they accuse each other of slipping. Cassian and Luthen accuse each other of slipping. Luthen accuses Cassian of being uh, not supporting the troops, being a dove.
to sentiment.
Yeah, yeah, that's sentiment, and probably playing up with everything with Bix
Mhm.
in that mix as well. Bix in
Yeah.
that mix. Um, but yeah, it's a real question again. From I think from talking about this last week, Luthen continuing to be a less reliable character in as a guide to what the story is saying the right course of action should be. I think his fatalism is catching up with him. His fatalism is eating away at him, and so he wants to lash out and fight back, and Cassian says, "No, hold on a minute." I know I'm not directly answering your question, but kind of this is the aftermath of it, right?
Right.
Realizing, oh, they're not ready. They're gonna do something. Of course, he sends Valencinta in there anyway, but yeah, it definitely was a turning point in, like you said, Cassian. Luthen is who Cassian grows beyond, and this
Don't you mean the
seems
opposite of Catherine's who loosen? No, loose. Catherine is who. Shoot, I got the sentence mixed
Luthen.
up.
No, Luthen is the one who Cassian grows beyond,
Yeah, that's right. But
and we saw it, I think, in this difference of opinion here.
mhm.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
and it's an interesting change. I hope people catch it. Again, another question: if people are gonna say, "Oh, Luthen, he's so cool, he's right," no, he's going from right to wrong. Just again, like Draven ultimately is wrong in telling Cassian to kill Galen. Luthen and Draven very much have similar purposes here. It's why I confused them too for a while. I think a lot of people might confuse. They're effectively the same character in a lot of ways. Just
in
maybe
some ways
different.
they are. Although
You know,
Draven's still a general in the Alliance proper.
this is true. Yeah,
Seems very
I
much
mean, but
more of a
Luthen could have. I don't know.
maybe. If,
But
if
in terms of the function for Cassian,
oh
so
yeah,
and Cassian goes against Draven's order.
right. So okay, now let's get to Bell and Cinta.
Yeah.
They patched things up. That's nice. Definitely seems like Cinta was having a year after Tacoma disappeared. How's Ash doing about that? How's our friend Ash doing?
I told her the whole no body, no death.
Okay,
And then
okay,
when it comes to Palpatine, even then.
that's true. That's true.
But you never know.
So yeah, so they're doing okay.
Well, Ash is saying then she's not going to feel bad if Luthen and Cinta eat it.
That's
Those-
true.
yeah. Mhm.
But no, I mean we see them with the Gorman front.
Mhm.
And yeah, they aren't ready, and that one kid screws up,
Yep.
and we lose Cinta because of it.
Mhm.
Again, I do think there's some real world criticisms of burying your gays, which I've talked about with some of
Mhm.
my friends of the LGBTQ plus community, especially
Yeah.
where Star Wars doesn't have a lot of gay couples,
Mhm.
unfortunately. And Andor, this is like the one prominent queer couple, and now the
Yeah.
one's dead. And now it's dead, quite literally.
Yeah.
So after a very good kiss, by the way, very good long
Yeah.
kiss, not just a little peck on that cheek, but
Well, they did more than kiss.
yeah, they did more than
Just
kiss.
like Cyril and Dedra did more than kiss.
Oh yeah,
And Cassian and Bix did more.
oh yeah, they touched hands. They touched hands. I can tell you. But no, I mean,
Yes.
uh, outside of some very real world consequences for killing your gay characters off,
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely sad. And yeah, this is right. It's very much, these kids aren't ready, unfortunately, and they
Mhm.
paid the price. And I also it's interesting again. They're talking about like Luthen's kind of micromanaging everybody, and it's like we gotta talk to Luthen about this.
Mhm.
Um, so what do you make of their characters?
Well, I'll start with the death. Because
Hard.
yeah, Cinta, in the first arc, a year before this, she's and in season 1, she's completely stone faced. At the end on Ferrix there, like the mission comes first, and then that look they have on Chandrilla, and it's heartbreaking. It's like I don't even know who you are right now. And for her to come back a year later and have all these emotional expressions and just actually open up herself that she had this accident that is a great instance of Shona tell. We don't know what that accident was, but it clearly got her to rethink her priorities. And so here she is finally being able to be open with Val and be herself with Val, and presumably what they had before because they were together before that. But having that wonderful moment. Oh, there's maybe a future here, and no, and uh, the cost of the Gorman's incompetence, this kid's incompetence, just leaving his post, uh, leaving what he needs to do, precisely what Vel told him to do very clearly: stay there, make sure everything's okay, and just don't have a gun at all. Do not trust it with a gun. I mean, on the one hand, it is again foreshadowing of them doing the wrong thing in the wrong time and playing into Dedra's plan. But also, man, it's one of those things. I get what Tony Gilroy's doing, but yeah, it was disappointing, and it was like, we need these good stories. Maybe I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's as far as say the Acolyte and its refusal to be aspirational and hopeful the way Star Wars so often is.
To be fair, we have a dark side story. I don't think it can be aspirational.
But yeah, and so that's the way killing off Yord and Jackie, killing off Cinta here. Yeah, maybe because that's the thing is that theme of finding meaning and finding love in the cause, outside of the cause, around the cause, despite the cause. This is a step back. This is a step back to season one, step back to the first arc. Maybe yeah, I guess it's kind of the before picture. It's before the first half of the show. We're at the halfway point now. I don't know. Talk about using killing character off for the sake of stakes. I guess we'll see the effect it has on this kid. Probably tomorrow. We'll probably see that. Do you see the effect it might have on Bell tomorrow? We'll see that potentially. Um, but yeah, it was is a little too Game of Thrones, I think. And yeah, and then I mean, I want you to speak more to this barrier gaze, because yeah, it was the most heartfelt moment between. I mean, yeah, there's the hand touching with Cassian and Bix, but Cassian and Bix are kind of an amalgam of Vel and Cinta and Cyril and Dedra. In that, I mean, Vel and Cinta are also partners in this rebellion, this fight, but Cassian and Bix will become that the way the way Dedra and Cyril are partners in this ISB plot. But also you see the heartfelt emotional moment between the two, and why kill them off? Yeah, why kill her off rather? So I mean, I do speak. Yeah, I think we should give some time to the barrier gaze trope. Why it's problematic, and is it? Are people in the community, are they saying that it's kind of not I don't want to say unforgivable, but that definitely weakens the episode?
It definitely makes it unenjoyable. Well, I mean, it's unfortunately, it's like the straight couples right now are having a good time, but the one gay couple in this entire show
Yeah,
that gets a nice kiss is dead. How does that seem fair?
yeah,
If they were all gay, then different story, a little
mhm,
bit maybe, but
yeah,
like Daedra and Cyril, man woman, Bix and Cassian, man woman, Vel and
yeah,
Cinta, queer, dead.
yeah,
Um, you know, So, it's sort of like, well, there's not a lot of gay representation in Star
mhm,
Wars and on screen. This is like
yeah,
the one good one. Finally got, and like I thought, like, oh, they kiss, so that's even a step up from season one, where it's like
yeah,
kind of implied they're partners, but you don't really see it. And then here
mhm.
it's like, ooh, they smooching and doing all sorts of things.
And
Um,
step up from Rise of Skywalker, where
oh,
out of nowhere,
I mean,
um,
hey, I don't mind like background stuff, but like in front of the
yeah,
camera, even better.
yeah.
That's
Now that
nice.
being said, you know, if Cyril does turn again, that probably will be the end for him and Dedra. Bix again isn't in Row One. Cassian's kind of lost. That might lead to just something happens to Bix as well. All the talk about Bix not being ready and Cassian being so worried about what might happen to her. all these things being set up. That being said, do you really need to kill off Cinta to raise those stakes? Does that,
Yeah. I mean, I
I don't know.
no one says it was like done in poor taste per se.
No.
It's been weird. Sort of like what happened in the first, sort of like the controversial moment in the first episode. It's not like it was
Yeah.
in complete poor taste because there's been a lot worse things.
Yeah.
But it's still kind of just a little sad. It's like, damn.
Mhm.
Um,
I'll say this. I know how this is how I feel about it. I don't know what I think about it. I think it could, if we see the series overall, it could make it fit better. It's really disappointing in the story. I don't know if it's disappointing in the real world, if you know what I mean. For out of universe reasons.
maybe. I mean,
Like both
I just think
representation reasons and storytelling reasons. I
I mean,
don't know. I
Star
honestly
Wars
don't
does need
know
more
what I
queer
think.
characters in general, so
Yeah.
that aren't prominent on screen. So there's that. Anything
Mhm.
that can make it through and have a happy ending. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
Need to read Dr. Afra for that.
that's true. Yeah, we want more effort, whichever thing I get it to. But yeah, so yeah, there was that.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, I kind of expect Bix to
Yeah.
not make it out of this, quite frankly. Because she's not around, and
Yeah.
Kathy needs to be very sad by the time Rogue
Yes.
One comes. So there's that.
Mhm.
Speaking of young people who are having a day, let's get to Wilmond. He's
Mhm.
hanging out with good old Saw and smelling that toxic fumes. Nice to see Saw. Always good
Mhm.
to see Forrest Whitaker do his thing. Um,
Mhm.
Wilman with Saw makes so much sense, and I love it.
Mhm.
Because I mean I don't know how much you remember season one, but he lost his dad in to Ferrex in
Mhm.
season one.
Yeah.
Like he's the one who threw like the bomb during the protest.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like, oh no, this makes perfect sense. He totally would be going with Skylar. I think he's mad, he's angry,
Mhm.
um, and he ready to do this thing. He's tired.
Mm.
Um, I like this arc. I mean, I feel like again this is very much set up to something. Um, I really liked Saw's speech.
Mm.
First he talked a little bit about being on a prison camp on Onderon. So I wonder when that was going on. That was something.
Yeah.
Maybe it was just during the Empire, it was before it. And then
Mhm.
he smokes the thing and he explains to him, why are you smoking it? Because like he goes like it's my sister, it's my something something something. And then I have the rest of the speech right here. He goes, "You think I'm crazy? Yes, I am. Revolution is not for the sane. Look at us, unloved, hunted, cannon fodder. We'll all be dead before the Republic is back, and yet we are here. Where are you, boy? You're here. You're not with Luthen. You're here, and you're ready to fight. We're the Ryo kid. We're the fuel. We're the thing that explodes when there's too much friction in the air. Let it in, boy. That's the freedom calling. Let it. Let it in. Let it run. Let it run wild." Um, and yeah, that was such a good moment. I love
Yeah.
Saw speeches. 'Cause he's crazy. He's so forward. He's so crazy. I love him.
He's
Um,
bonkers.
oh yeah, but great, good stuff.
Yeah. Mhm.
Very curious to see where Saw's going. Part of me thinks Saw's going to end
Yeah.
up on Ghorman for some reason. I don't know why. I
Yeah.
just feel like he might be there.
Mhm.
Um, he wants something crazy to happen.
Yeah.
But no, I thought that was interesting, and it makes sense for Wilman to
Mm.
be with Saw at this moment.
Yeah.
What did you make of this whole little story?
Well, first I'll say I'll tell you where Saw is headed. He's headed
I-
to on Jeddah, and his adoptive daughter Jin comes, and the first thing he thinks is, "Have you come here to betray me?" And he has this mask, and yeah, taken up by just this drug of rebellion, and how rebellion can be a drug, and just like with Bix, how the sleeping thing could be a drug that puts her to sleep and
Moves it down a
lets her.
high, not a truth.
Yeah, well, it puts her and gets her to the ignore the troubles of the world and in her own mind. Here, Saw is on this drug that gets him to cause troubles, and um, yeah, I mean, it's again, it's these different extremes. and here's Cassian gonna have to Cassian and Mon and the Rebel Alliance are gonna have to learn how to chart these extremes in a rational, systemic, planned out way that is um, uh, conforms to the values and pursues the values and the meaning in the galaxy that they're hoping for. Whereas with Saw, he's like, yeah, let's just smoke this Rhydonium. Again, another very fascinating, less reliable character. And of course, Saw has been unreliable this whole time. Again, thinking in Rebels, how he about to kill the Genosians, right? Um, so yeah, I do like it. I do like how the munitions expert from
Also,
Barracks is
just a
also
small thing
in.
before we
Yeah.
begin. Nice to see. I love live action Saw Gerrera saying the words Onderon.
Yes.
That's another Ion Canon thing for me, where it's like,
Yeah.
yes.
The discipline of continuity among screen was very strong in this.
Mhm,
Yeah. Well, even saying his sister,
mhm,
right? I mean, have Forrest Whitaker's mentioned how much much Steela's death has affected him all this time, and it's still eroding and still working on him over and over. Goes to the story of how he, yeah, was like you mentioned, he was in this camp. Um, maybe that was during the Clone Wars, maybe it was before, maybe it was after, possibly, I don't know, possibly before during the Clone Wars, could be a separatist camp, but also we see him for a minute in Bad Batch, so that there's something there. Yeah, again, providing this foil, this kind of antithesis to what Cassian is ultimately going to be doing. But for now, maybe he's also going to be playing in Dedra's hands. This is one thing I've wondered: Saw is he easily provoked into doing the wrong thing at the wrong time? If he ends up on Ghorman, if he's going to Ghorman, we can kind of that's going to be a cue. It's going to be a clue to say he's going to do something that provokes an imperial crackdown. And uh, yeah, that's an important, essential part in this in this story, and so that's why he's there. And yeah, Willman, definitely, yeah, like you mentioned, the death of his father affected by that. I did, end up watching. You did end up watching the last episode of season one, and how bitter he is his father's death, and how bitter he is against the Empire. Yeah, how focused and fixated on building that bomb he is, that he's turned this into a career basically. And uh he's going to be, yeah, like you said, it makes sense. He's going down this path with Saw first as a pawn to basically rat out this imperial informant. Is that going to weigh on his conscience a bit more than usual, and drive him down a path as well? What part does Saw and the partisans play in all this? And how do they get to Jeddah? All that. So yeah, it's I do think, like I was saying off the top here, all these things are going to converge. All these different plot lines are going to converge. I can definitely see Saw bringing this bomb to, or bringing a bomb. Some of them bringing a bomb to Ghorman, giving the Empire an excuse to crack down, and driving Saw and Willman and uh, yeah, and others probably uh, into more extreme situations. Even look, the Ghorman massacre, and we'll get to her in a minute. The Ghorman massacre drives Mon to reject the Senate, reject the system.
right.
Okay, what's it gonna do to Saul? What's it gonna do to Luth and Cassie?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that we're. Oh, actually, I do kind of think. Actually, I do think Luke Saw could go to Gorman, and here's why. Remember,
Yeah.
if Tony Gilroy does his canon, what is Saw ultimate? What is Saw's biggest contribution to the rebellion?
In terms of what?
He finds the Death Star. He knows about the
Yeah.
Death Star. What's
Yeah.
Gorman ultimately for? The Death
The
Star.
the casing around the Kyber. Yeah. True.
So actually am now starting to think, yeah, I think it would make sense because Saw has always kind of been on the trail of the Death Star,
Hmm.
and Gorman is like one step away removed from Death Star.
Hmm.
So I wouldn't be surprised if that's kind of why
Yeah.
again he's back on that trail. Um,
And that might also have something to do with the Gorman massacre,
yeah,
right? I mean, the Empire, they eliminate the Geonosians because they know too much.
right.
Will Saw and some others know too much about the Death Star?
That's true. So they gotta hide.
Mm.
But yeah. So let's get to the let's save the best for last again. Let's get to Mon Mothma. So I before we get so I know we're gonna get to Mon Mothma, but we had to first tie this in with Lucen because they're kind of both in the storyline.
Mhm.
Lots of storylines kind of interconnecting.
Yeah.
So this is Clea, Lucen, Mon storyline. Again, Lucen's kind of slipping. The painting that Davos Golden has been compromised.
Mhm.
Clea needs to get the listening device out, and so they're all kind of heading to this art gallery.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, Mon Mothma trying to get votes for Bill Gorman and not getting any senator to
Right.
listen in. We see the alien oath keeper giving the Republic pledge, the Empire Pledge of Allegiance, and Bond starts to talk about it for like 2 seconds, and then she kind of like stops, and she kind of
Yeah.
gripping her hands, like, no, no, I'm done. I'm not. I'm done with this BS, and I'm out of here.
Mhm.
So before we get to the art gallery, let's talk about that little moment. Let's talk
Mhm.
about first kind of let's go with Luso. I'm going to ask you, what are we talking kind of the art gallery plot with Lucen and Clea kind of slipping, and also the
Yeah.
scene with Mon in the Senate, kind of like, I don't want to say the Pledge of Allegiance today.
Yeah. Well, I didn't quite catch with Mon. I did a little bit with Mon, just quietly dissenting. Again, that's also foreshadowing what we'll see in Secret Cargo,
Hmm.
right? She's starting to say, okay, the system isn't working out. With Luthen and Clea, yeah, it's. I mean, I love all the spy craft with Clea and all the little there's the audio technologies. Also, very World War II
I love
esque with
Clea.
all the
She's great. That's just a thing.
yeah, and we see her, in season one. It's kind of a 1-2 Luthen and Clea. Here, this is flipped. Like Clea is starting to call the shots because Luthen is, yeah, like you're saying, he's slipping. His ability to sense um when the time to invest in Gorman is off or not. Uh, even the first arc where she unilaterally says, "I got to go back to Coruscant. I can't do what I need to do here on Chandrila." Here, she's definitely on the ball, much sharper, and kind of rising beyond Luthen also. And so, yeah, really, really very strong. She's now the strong female lead, if you will, if in that sense, kind of what taking over from what Dedra was in a way, just on the other side
Hmm.
from last season. I mean, Dedra's still rising up. Ash was talking about this, being the woman in the man's world, still rising up there. Clea in a little bit too, right? Luthen calling the shots, and Clea saying, "You don't know what you're doing here. You're starting to lose the sense, lose the plot here. I'm going to go and I'm going to take care of what needs to be done, do what needs to happen." So that, I mean, similar also to Vel and Cinta also going in, and Vel giving that boy a talking to for thinking he was so, here's the gender side too, right? Thing, he was so cool and swashbuckling with a blaster, and yet look what happens with him. So yeah, Clea also playing that up. Again, I love all that technology.
Oh yeah,
And
I
then
love her. I love her board. Her board's
yeah, and then yeah, with Mon Mothma, with Mon again also being able to figure out what the best solution is. Even the senator from Ghorman can't side with her, right? If they're so far coward in fear that that the system has squashed them so much that he's going to vote against defending his own people because he's too afraid of the emperor. Understandable. They're no fault of
Mhm.
his own, but that's all this is playing into what again we're going to see in what we see in Secret Cargo, which I'm repeating this a lot because this is all where this is leading is Yeah, where does uh when does Mon reject the Empire and resign her seat and say, no, we actually have to do a bit of what Saw Gerrera was doing. We have to have this armed resistance as an alliance to restore the Republic, because the Empire is not going to uh, do any good for anybody. Yeah, that this is definitely the first clear moment of that, where she's trying to move the blockade. She's trying to send relief to Ghorman, I gather, and yeah, and that it's just not able to happen. Maybe there it is. Maybe there's the parallel, right? How uh you know can't it's how hard it is, how impossible it is, I don't know, to get relief and supplies to Gaza, and
Yep.
even and just how the Empire is stopping that, even though there's clearly suffering going on. So yeah, in Gaza and on Ghorman. Starts with a G. I don't know if that's a coincidence.
Probably.
But yeah, that's a coincidence. But and again, I'm also reading all these things. I'm reading things into it because it's what I do. It's what we do here at the Iron Cannon podcast. But yeah, it's definitely, like you said, really building up. We didn't get much
Well,
with
hold
Mon Mothma.
on.
We got a
Let's
lot
talk.
of substantive things.
Let's talk
So
about something though, and when we get to the art gallery,
yeah,
because Mon Mothma does have
yeah,
a run-in with the other 50% of that Rebel Alliance,
yes,
Bail Organa, played by
yes.
Benjamin Bratton.
Oh, that was for 2 seconds.
Yeah. So I'll just kind of ask you before we get
Yeah,
into like the story again. Kind of take a
yeah,
little bit of a detour. What
yeah.
were your just a reaction to seeing recasted Bail Organa for like 5 seconds? You kind of
Yeah, it threw me out a bit. It was a bit of an uncanny plateau kind of thing. But then I was immediately curious. Okay, I have to read about it. What happened there? Googled it immediately. It's like, okay, Tony Gilroy tried to get him in, tried to get Jimmy Spitz. He couldn't. Scheduling conflicts, all that. They wanted to get it out. I'm over it. It's fine. Benjamin Bratt's going to do fine.
It'll be in more episodes, so
Yeah, he's going to have a more prominent role. We'll have more time to get used to it. I get why people are finding it difficult. I found Ahsoka difficult. That's effectively a recast from Ashley Eckstein to Rosario Dawson, in a way. I get why people find it difficult. We'll see. I think I'm under it, the fact that Tony Leroy tried his best. That definitely helped me say, okay, it's not. It wasn't this cavalier, arbitrary thing that they just decided to do. They're doing the best with what they could, given the limits Disney had given them. Could Disney have figured it out somehow? Sure, but do they want to set that precedent of always just figuring things out for people? I don't know, and just steamrolling everything. Would Jimmy Smith have been better? Probably, yeah. I mean, not probably, definitely. Of course he would have. But Benjamin Bratt's a great actor, and I think he'll do fine.
I mean, I guess here's the question: would you have rather they write Bale out of the story completely? We never see Bale in this show.
If so, here's what makes me wonder about this: is that there might be something about him where it has to be Bale.
Mhm.
I don't think it has anything with Leia, but it could have something to do with Alderaan.
Well, he is 50% of the rebellion, so Bale's doing his
Yeah.
own rebel stuff.
So
He'll-
yeah, if they had written a different character or something, some kind of maneuver, like kind of did a lateral, was more agile about that, flexible about that. Yeah, but clearly somebody, and probably Tony Gilroy and maybe Kathy Kennedy or story group folks, were adamant that it had to be Bale. And so there will, if we get that reason tomorrow or next week, whenever that is,
Mm.
if that's convincing enough, then yeah, I'll even more fine with the recast. I think if it's a bit flimsy with reason, I'll still be, I think, okay with it. It just is what it is.
Well,
Yeah,
Star Wars got to
didn't.
get used to recast, right? I mean, if we want these
Yeah,
characters to be forever,
like I
then
would have preferred a recast Luke. We talked again. We also talked
oh
about this
yeah,
last night. Would have preferred a recast Luke in Mandalorian, frankly. Um, so
do more.
yeah, you're right. Again, got to get used to it. It is what it is. Jimmy Smits and Benjamin Bratt are real people with real time constraints in this real world. um, Star Wars is a fictional universe. You know, Leia, they recast Leia because they needed her to be a kid, right?
It'd be
And
nice to see Leia again, but I don't think we will. But it'd be nice. That'd be kind of
yeah,
cool.
again, so what's the reason why it has to be Bale? I'm curious about that. Other
Yeah,
than could it be someone else? At first, I thought Senator Organa. Oh, could it be, say, Brea's brother? Maybe, who also happens to be a senator. Oh no, uh what's his face?
Benjamin
Mon's
Bratt.
husband.
Oh,
Mon's husband.
Perrin.
Perrin, yeah. I get one an episode, guys. Perrin says hi Bale, just to make it clear. This is Bale Organa.
Right. I think
Yeah,
we'll probably by next episode probably be like, okay, this is why we have Bale. So
yeah.
I just want to get that out of the way.
Mhm.
They who I'm really miffed about, like, why couldn't
Well,
the old keeper have been Masameda? Come on, why can't Masameda be going an empire
yeah.
instead of
Well, what
weird?
did you think of the recast? You give your thoughts.
Oh, I mean, I knew about this because I follow leaks online,
Oh, okay.
so I kind of knew this was coming.
Mhm.
Because I heard there was like whispers of recast, and Tony Gilroy even said in interviews like, legacy characters are hard. Like, we're either
Yeah.
not going to do it or we're going to recast. I thought he was talking about Tarkin at first, where it's like maybe they just wouldn't
Mhm.
do CGI Tarkin and just recast him.
Yeah.
But no, Gilroy wasn't a fan of that. But by then it was
Sure.
too late. So,
Yeah.
but I guess okay, well, but then I like heard more whispers like maybe it's Bale. I heard Bale, so I'm like, oh, that's a little disappointing. But
Hmm.
I'm glad he's in the story, and
Yeah.
if I because I've always said it's like, isn't it weird that Bale's like the other most important leader of the rebellion and he's not
Mhm.
around?
Mhm.
Like that just
Yeah.
kind of feels like an odd thing to me.
Completes the Mask of Fear trio.
That's true, yeah. Get
Mask of Fear really is really feeling like a tie-in
mhm.
unofficially. I think I may have said this already, but
Yeah.
really feeling like an unofficial tie-in to this series. So there you go.
Okay with it. I'll be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, but
Okay.
back to the art gallery. So we go to
Yes.
the art gallery. Mon's there. Clay is there. Lonnie's there from season one. He's got
Hmm.
and his Imperial ISB friends.
Yeah.
Um, and there's this really intense moment. Clay's trying to get the thing out. She's bleeding. Krennic is there, and Mon and Krennic have like their little caddy off. Lots of good stuff. What do you make of all this?
Yeah. Again, like a prelude to open animosity. Definitely, Mon still staying within the very civilized, very um, systemic thing that leads to the empire, right? But she's still trying to be part of the world, uh in a way, and Claire being part of the world as well. Yeah, it reminding, I mean, I definitely love the way well, the uh what, oh, I'm blanking on this guy again. The guy,
Aaron,
no,
Krennic,
not Perrin. The Mon's the in-laws. The
in-laws. Oh,
uh
Davos, Sir
yeah, yeah,
Davos Golden.
yeah, that yeah, well, just building up that his collection, he's this collector, um kind of this, almost this colonial collector, but also, amassing all this wealth. Someone who Chelly would make bank on. I honestly did not plan with wearing the shirt. Let's pick a Star Wars shirt. I'll wear this, but hey, Chelly would make a lot of bank on. Um, hey, I want to see Chelly now. Come on, live action, and yeah, filling out the history and the story, the history and the richness of the galaxy and universe, having this backstory of this ancient culture that uh, they were blind, and blindness was considered this honor, and so they create these books out of these spiral sculptures. Um, yeah, again, all this really fascinating, and as a backdrop to the maneuvering and posturing between Mon and Krennic, and uh, all that, speaking to again what is about to happen, what is about to go down. We'll be witnessing 24 hours from now. Um, you know, I thought of Battlestar Galactica. All this has happened before. All this will happen again. That kind of thing. So, yeah, it was the whole scene, the whole thing. I mean, yeah, this is the thing I was waiting for. This is the thing I was like, when are we getting to Mon? When are we getting to Mon? I kind of wish maybe it was spread across all 3 episodes. Again, I get why it was a very Cassian focused arc because it's a very Cassian focused show.
Well, it's called
But
Cassian Andor. Well,
it's called Andor. It's true. It's not called Andor and Mon Mothma. But
Do you think that's just because you're a Star Wars fan and like you just attach more to pre-established characters compared to like it's the age-old adage of like Star Wars fans, we want our glub shitos more than we want the new people.
no, it's more that I just like politics more than spycraft, I think is what it is. I'm just more interested, like, again, Mask of Fear. I loved it, especially for the Mon Mothma parts, right? Which is the main story. So in that one. So yeah, it was the thing I was hoping for. I think I was looking forward to all of Mon's legislative wielding dealing straight out of the Mask of Fear, right? All those conversations she's having with all these senators, trying to build a coalition for this legislation that we know Palpatine is not a fan of, and we're told that he's not a fan of by the senator from Ghorman, and so yeah, we need more of this sort of. It's not the West Wing because the West Wing is utopian. This is kind of dystopian, but I want more of this political drama in Star Wars. I think it's been way too long. This kind of prequel phobia of having political drama in Star Wars, and
I
I'm
think it's
glad
not
it's back.
prequel phobia. I just think people aren't interested in it these days. I think just people dislike action. Like I
I
don't
think
think Star.
I
I
don't know.
mean,
I think people are more interested than they think. I mean, there's a reason West Wing did well. There's a reason House of Cards did well. Yeah, I
yeah,
don't
but
give us
people say
Senate
West Wing.
speeches.
I mean, West Wing though today is considered trash, and so is the House of Cards. They're kind of both considered trashy shows these days by a lot of
Okay,
people. I mean,
I guess I don't know. Okay,
no, I
I
know
mean,
lots of people who are like West Wing's out of date and kind
well,
of
West
just.
Wing's this fantasy.
I know, but just, I don't like it.
Yeah,
I just think people. I mean, to be fair, House of Cards has an actor who maybe
yeah, there's
nobody
that
wants to
too.
admire anymore.
But yeah,
I mean, it's always
or
been
even what's the mob show? Not
Sopranos,
no, the one that came out recently, that finished recently.
Penguin.
No, well, Penguin probably like that too, but it's Succession.
Oh yeah,
That one, you
maybe.
know. I think
I don't
yeah,
know. I
that
mean, I feel like Star Wars will always kind of be more about the action before it's just about a space politics, quite frankly.
yeah. I'm more of a fan. I want it more.
I mean, I think that's just one of those limits of Star Wars going to Star Wars.
Yeah. So that's the interesting thing. So yesterday, my brother asked me because he's read Living Force. He's now visiting. I'm telling him, read The Mask of Fear. This is a bit of a tangent. Read The Mask of Fear. It's so great. It's the successor to Darth Plagueis in terms of its political intrigue, I would say, in terms of just the depth and complexity of its politics and the way it's crafted so well.
I would
You
even
asked
say it
me,
goes
which
deeper
is
than Plagueis. I think you can go.
yeah, maybe. Let's see, but he asked me which is better, Living Force or Mask of Fear, and I said, even though I'm more a fan of the Space Wizards, Mask of Fear, because it's also the depth of politics is so interesting. I actually like Mask of Fear better than Living Force, believe it or not, which is
I
kind of
actually think
surprising.
Mask of Fear is better, just better written.
Yeah, maybe that's part of it. Not that Living Force is bad, but yeah, that's a tangent. Back to Star Wars. Back to Andor. Yeah, I don't. I mean, what do you think of the politics of especially Mon and Krennic going toe to toe?
I mean, it's very on the nose. It's like Krennic's
Yeah.
your typical, they're a bunch of terrorists. We gotta crush them, and Mon's very the humanitarian,
Hmm.
um, you know, in the morally correct.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's pretty simple stuff. I didn't think it was super complex in that way.
Sure.
I thought it was more intense, just kind of thinking like, oh god, is Clay gonna get out the thing? Is she gonna get out the
Yeah.
thing? It's like, oh gosh, they're getting closer. Run away, hide,
So they
quick.
kind of snuck in a little heist moment there, like the
Yeah.
tension of the heist, that kind of genre. Yeah, and setting the stage
hmm
for the next 2 weeks.
I have a feeling next week will probably be more Mon focused. I mean, it kind of has to be to some extent. This is kind of the big moment of
Yeah.
Gorman and her uh, her moment of leaving the Senate for
Yeah,
good.
that I've mentioned a lot. Yeah, Secret Cargo.
Um,
One thing we didn't mention is even in the first episode, uh, her assistant
oh
Erskine,
yeah, oh yeah, from
live
Rebel.
action.
I
Yeah,
know with an English Coruscant accent because she had an American one in Rebels.
but
I'm
he's also half Gorman, which
that's
Ash
true.
was talking. He's half Gorman. Wow. Okay.
Oh
So.
yeah, we might get a bit of a moment next to the episode, Willie.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
never thought about that. That's interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's go.
Yeah.
Just gonna look at notes. I think. I
Yeah.
mean, I've covered almost everything I've wanted to cover in
Yeah.
this. I still think I like the first arc a bit more.
Interesting. Yeah.
Maybe because it also had the wedding, and I like that wedding arc quite a
Yeah. That
lot.
was cool.
I mean, I do think Mon has the strongest arc in the show.
Yeah.
By far. Um, I would love to know the behind the scenes of Andor and when like Gilroy decided
Mhm.
why is this just not Andor and his spy adventures? Like why have
Yeah.
all these B plots and C plots and
Mhm.
why I mean maybe this was sort of to give Andor more of a grander narrative beyond just here's a story about a spy.
Yeah.
And like here's how this plays into the wider Star Wars narrative and
Mhm.
to do that, of course, you need Mon Mothma because she's kind of important to that narrative. Uh, at least if you're going to go in this direction.
Mhm.
Um, so that will be fun. But yeah, I think, but this arc was still good, and I think this arc combined with I mean, not next week, this week's,
Tomorrow.
tomorrow's,
Yeah.
will definitely hit home because I'm hearing a lot of good things. Just,
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
excited.
I'm hearing a lot of good things from you. So
Yeah,
via them via you. So
yes,
yeah.
people who saw it all ahead of time. So
Yeah.
my guess, just to kind of last minute speculation, then we'll
Mhm.
close it out.
Yeah.
I think next week. I mean, next week, not next week. Tomorrow's. I think tomorrow's is sort of our climax. Our
Yeah.
sort of like everything comes together for this big moment. We've been building to Gorman
Mhm.
for like the whole season, and everything's gonna culminate in this arc, kind
Mhm.
of, and then the arc after my guess at Yavin, because it's going to be lead up to Rogue One, will kind of like an epilogue wrap up of kind of everybody else, kind of
Mm.
tying up any loose ends we got to tie up, that sort of thing. And then obviously Andor and K2 going to go meet with
Yeah.
Saw's informant, and Rogue One happens, everybody. So
Yeah.
that's my guess of how the story goes.
The one thing that's making me wonder
Mhm.
is that there's a lot of story to tell in that fourth arc, right? And it's gonna lead up everything right to the end. But like, if the big climax is in this next arc, we can't have 3 hours of just wrapping things up. I'll be like Lord of the Rings, like Return of the King, But that was only what 20 minutes of wrapping things up of a much longer story. Yeah, I mean, we've been leading to Gorman ever since season one, ever since Mon Mothma mentioned it, ever since Secret Cargo. She mentioned Secret Cargo, animated show. Um, yeah, I honestly don't. I don't know what's going to happen in the fourth arc. I think because there's got to be something, still something big. Maybe that one is going to be more the Death Star.
I can
Maybe
see
that
that.
one's going to be, is it going to be Gorman? that's going to be the Death Star. Maybe that one is really going to earn the recast because it might also be Alderaan, and funding the rebellion and all these things that coming together to get us to Rogue One and A New Hope.
Well, we know that the final arc is like the year of Rogue One.
Yeah,
So
the year of Rogue One and A New Hope, and how the Empire knows that Alderaan is funding the Empire and whatnot. So, uh, yeah, maybe there we see Leia
that'd be interesting.
in that
Oh,
fourth arc. She'll be old enough,
true. Maybe they'll finally have the guts to recast a young Leia. That'd be something.
Yeah, so
Be-
it'd
Tony
be
Gilroy.
fascinating, but we know what's happening tomorrow, and yeah, I will say just to give ratings. It's funny. The first arc had I give both of these arcs 9 out of 10. The first arc had the Yavin plot line. This one had Cinta and Saw being kind of weird. Those aren't so much Nox, but
Oh, it's always weird.
yeah, Saw's always weird. But also, the first arc had Mon Mothma and Chandrila, and yeah, everything with Bix. Oddly enough, in the first arc, the weakest link was Cassian's story. In this one, yeah, there aren't necessarily weak links, but this one, of course, had Mon Mothma, had Cassian on Ghorman, had again Mon Mothma, and Luthen, and Dedra and Cyril. It didn't have a weak link. It just had a little bit of. I still don't know what to think of Cinta. So
Yeah.
maybe I'll bump it up to 9.5. So I guess I think more highly of it than the first arc. They're both. The season is already so spectacular.
Oh god, yeah. This is like
and
it's
more
still firing off the cylinders.
Yeah, and more consistently high. Even than Ahsoka. Ahsoka will be my favorite just because of what it deals with. But this one, in terms of being well made, definitely 9.5s across the board.
Oh
Do
yeah,
the number
this
thing.
is this one is definitely not cheap to make,
Yeah,
and you can
true.
see it. Thank goodness.
So maybe that's why they recast because they blew all their money on other things. So
do you don't? Do you really want to deep fake Jimmy Smits?
no, but like whatever if they kind of deal whatever they had to do to get Jimmy scheduled, who knows what. But anyway,
Sure. But yeah, this show's still spectacular.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I agree. I think I definitely appreciate. I'll say this: I appreciate this arc for the fact that it's more about Cassian, and he is still the main character of
Yeah.
the show. And I hope, and I do.
Yeah.
You never want that to be kind of lost on the show. The show is still
Yeah.
called Andor. When we get to that final arc, I do think Cassian still has to be the person we have still the most focus on. It's his show. He definitely, it's like as much as you want to like Mon Mothma stuff, it's like he's still been the heart of the show since season 1.
Yeah.
And I think we gotta end it on him. It starts with him. It should end with him.
Yeah, for sure.
And then
But to get to your question, just one last thought. Bringing Mon in, bringing Thaw in. What those do is help build up the classic Star Wars trajectory. Starting with Luke, he's just on the farm, and he's pulled out into a wider story. Ezra's on Lothal, and he progressively moves to a wider story. Ahsoka's already dropped into the Clone Wars, so it's different. But Kazuda, start small, move to wider story. Cassian, we first see him here. He's shooting some corpos, and then he ends up going home, and then that gets picked up, and that he gets picked up by Luthen, and then progressively, this is playing up in coming into contact with what Mon is doing, what Saw is doing. That it's still Cassian's show, but the scale and the scope keeps getting bigger and bigger. So then that's why I think fourth arc is giving me Death Star as the end of season 1 teased very clearly. So
I
there you
okay. One more thing on the end.
go. Okay.
We know Tony has said there's no Palpatine, there's no Vader.
Yeah.
Do you believe him, or do you think he's just playing coy and there's going to be like one big Star Warsy thing? And I think this
Yeah.
season has proven, Tony, you're not above doing the Star Warsy and reminding us that we're in the Star Warsy world of wizards and silliness.
Yeah. Oh, you mean in terms of
Like a
like
big, oh, there's Darth Vader, or there's, the Emperor.
I mean, I think again, we've gotten the Palpatine name drop
Mhm,
that the ISB guy and Yularen had a meeting with him.
mhm,
I can see something just because the way Palpatine is so invested in the Death Star project.
mhm.
Maybe, if anything, Tarkin. That's the
I
thing.
could,
All the whispers about recasts and all that. I definitely want to see Tarkin. There we go.
okay, I could agree with that. All right, so that's it
Mm,
for this episode, everybody.
mm.
Thank you for joining us. We
Yeah, we
did
got
it.
a few comments
Oh,
here. One quite negative from Ingenious, but hopefully, turn your phone off. This is my suggestion. Turn your phone off. There we go. Positive. Yeah. Never over the series. Prestige show and pacing. Breath of fresh air. Adult Star Wars. Yeah, that's true. It's definitely not for kids. Um, the long play novelization. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Um, comic book flavor. Yeah, although comics they kind of got the long play too, but I know what you mean. It isn't just the action adventure. It's also, I mean, we get the shootout in this episode, in these
I
episodes,
think
but
Ahsoka also kind of nailed that
yeah,
novelization form a little bit more.
yeah, but this is
Pacing form.
definitely more serious. That's another thing Mon and Saw do is they make it more serious, right? The Mandalorian um tries to get big, but never really gets big enough. Not necessarily. I won't say big enough. It just never gets as big as. I mean, Ahsoka starts big, and Cassian, yeah, can't get bigger than the Death Star, right? So, yeah, um, yeah, definitely bigger and more serious than the Death Star. So, yeah, great comments. But yeah, I think that about does it. Thanks everyone for joining us. Let us know what you thought of these episodes, 4, 5, and 6 of Andor. What you thought of Tales of the Underworld? What do you think of what's this novel called? The Last Order. And
Yes.
looking at Finn and Jenna's story. Chris and I are going to talk about Tales of the Nightlands on Wednesday. Joel, thanks as always for leading us through this discussion. Really fascinating. As always, where can they find you on the internet?
You can find me at JID20234 on Blue Sky, and of course on the Star Wars Underworld Discord. And of course, you can follow us at the Ion Cannon Pod on Blue Sky. Feel free to see us there. We talk stuff. We get books of the day. I remember to do that. And other things too. So yeah, be on the lookout
There we go.
for that.
Yes, that's Blue Sky Ion Cannon. Just Ion Cannon. You can follow me on Twitter, on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky, MNEUG1138. Twitter, still on the Bird app, NEUG485. Also Instagram at beaches.foodie. I finally posted something. It wasn't very exciting, but I finally posted something. Beaches.foodie, FODIE on Instagram. And yeah, Iron Cannon Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. Tractor Beam this Wednesday. Free Comic Book Day, Codebreaker #1, Rise of Skywalker #3, and Ongoing #1. Very excited for that. Check that out right here on the Underworld YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch, and on Canon Twitch, and this episode 9 news Facebook, sure. 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on Wednesday
Mhm.
night. Next week, we've mentioned it, the Ghorman Massacre. That's what we're calling the title. That's what we're calling the episode, Joel.
Yes.
That's it.
And
So
be on the lookout. We might have a very special someone.
yes,
And we're
yes.
hoping that this arc lives up to our special someone's being on the show.
I think we're gonna get all the emotions, all the feels. So it'll be our 160th episode. I don't know if that means anything, but yeah, there we go. So Please do join us next week. Check out Tractor Room. Check out the flagship. They're going to be talking about the next episode as well. Thursday night, 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific, right here on however we get Underworld stuff. Tales from the Galaxy. I don't know if they're doing some things, and then of course the Ray side. Hannah's doing her thing. Yeah, check us out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts very soon. And yeah, get this episode up in a few minutes. And then yeah, until next week, let's not blow this thing because it's our home. Yeah. All right. Let's blow this thing and head home.